On. Okay, and we're live. Give me just a second. I forgot to turn that extra light on there. Oh, no, it is on. Silly me. Okay, well, off to a good start today, hey? Okay, so I've been pretty excited about this one. We're doing the Never-Ending Story Part 1. And like I said, how this is going to go is I'm going to give a summarized version of the chapter. Today, we're going to be talking not only about chapter 1, but the intro, because, well, the intro is very short. I figured I'd just pull it into chapter 1, and that's where we're going to start today. I'm going to summarize the chapter here in just a bit, give everyone a chance to catch up to us. And once I've summarized the intro and the chapter, hey, Romstead, good to see you. Once I have summarized the intro and the chapter, we're going to analyze the occult aspects of what is going on. In this particular one, there's not a lot of direct references, but there are certainly things that we can talk about in the that happen in the chapter. Not only the occult references, but I figured we'd also discuss what the differences are between the what happens in the book and what happens in the movie, and then possibly even what the difference in psychological effect is from one to the other. Okay, so before we get started on that, today's live, where did I put it? Just had it. Huh. Well, anyways, we're just drinking water tonight. I was going to show the water bottle and say tonight's live is brought to you by, I think it's Dasani. I would have been, oh well. Can't find the water bottle. Okay, so let me just check a few things before we get started here. Something seems a little funny. Let me just check one thing. No. Okay. Well, there was a bit of an intro in the beginning here. We'll actually wonder if I can get away with showing this. Get the PDF up over here. There's a little like forward here that talks about as an epic work of the imagination has captured the hearts of millions of readers worldwide. And they just kind of summarize themselves, so we're not going to bother reading all of that. But I am thinking that we can take a look at the book, at the table of contents without getting ourselves in any kind of trouble. So let's go ahead and do that. This is the first slide. We're going to just set some expectations before we get started here. Okay. So we're going to share screen. Window. This one. Share. Okay. So contents, prologue, chapter 1, Fantastica in Danger. That's today's discussion. That's the one we have read and we're going to be talking about. Then we got Atreyu's mission, Morla the Aged One, Igramul the Many, the Nomics, and then we get to the 3 magic gates, which you'll remember from the book, the Voice of Silence, or from the movie, I mean, the 2 magic gates in a movie, the Voice of Silence, the Wind Giants, Spook City, and this I believe is after he the flight to the Ivory Tower, the Childlike Empress, the Old Man of the Wandering Mountain, Perlin the Night Forest, the Desert of Colors, Gargarin the Many-Colored Death, the Silver City of Amarganth, a dragon for hero Henrik, the Icarus, the traveling companions, the seeing hand, the Stoic cloister. Well, anyways, yeah, here we are. I don't know why I bothered reading them all. The battle for the Ivory Tower, the city of the old emperors, Dame Eola, the picture mine, the water of life. Okay, so just pop back over here for a second. Oh, you can see the clicker. I'm always over on the other side. I hadn't realized you could do that. But as you can see, starts with the letters backwards. Okay. Yeah. We're gonna go ahead and stop sharing that now then. And come back over here. Like I said, it starts with him already in the shop. You know, the movie, it starts with um it starts with him it starts with him at his house, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. I'm gonna watch the movie again after all this, but it starts with him already in the shop, and he's looking outside at the letters, and they're spelled backwards, like I showed just in the live there. And it's clear that he's been running from someone, like the other kids. But then he notices the guy smoking the pipe, just like in the book. And the guy yells at him first, like, "Hey, either come in or come out." And so he goes into the store, and same conversation like in the movie. He starts telling him he doesn't like kids and he wants him out of there, but he doesn't tell him anything about the book, right? Hey, March of Time, good to see you. We've just started summarizing the story and what happens in the what actually happens in the story. So, yeah, like I said, it's a bit different than the book because he starts with it starts with him already in the store, and he's sitting in there upset because he got chased into the store. It's raining outside, and then he sees the pipe smoke behind the books, and the guy yells at him to either come in or come out. So he comes in, and then the guy tells him that he doesn't like kids. He wants him out of there. There are no books here that you would like, and I wouldn't sell you any books, even if you did want the books. And they get in a little bit of a back and forth there about one having Bastion Balthazar Baxton is Bastion's name, and the other guy is Carl Conrad Coriander. And he makes a big deal about the kid having to all B name, the alliteration, how that's lame. And then he asks him what his name, and it's C's. So that's that's actually one of our first Easter eggs because it's B and then C, right? This is what someone is like before the never ending story and then after. There's a hint there because Carl Conrad Coriander is still just a guy that owns a bookshop. He's a guy that, gets to experience all these different fantasies and helps people with their exploration of fantasy and fiction, right? So there's a before and after here, is what we're getting hinted at in the book. But to be clear, it's not like Bastion becomes this guy. It's just he becomes like him. But I'm very much doing a end of the book spoiler by saying that. This was like an Easter egg. And anyways, so we have that bit. And then the guy gets a phone call, goes and answers the phone, and Bastion sees the book sitting there and starts looking at it, and then just straight up decides to steal it. And he steals the book, then goes to decides that he can never go back to anywhere because he's stolen this book. He's never going to be able to go home again. He's being very overly dramatic. He can never go home again now that he's stolen this book. He'll surely get caught. He gets to school and decides that, well, if he's going to run away, he might as well do it he might as well not go to class. So he goes up in the attic, just like in the movie. From there, uh, and from there, he starts reading the book. And that's really the whole bit of the intro. Talks a little bit about the room. It's actually quite similar to the room as it looks in the movie. And he begins to read the book. Now, the book starts with a will-o'-the-wisp. Like in folklore, the will-o'-the-wisp, the light in the swamps that or in the forest that will guide people off of their path and guide them to get lost in the woods. They're actually hello, my love. It's good to see you. So, yeah. Yeah, this is I strongly suggest this series or this book. There isn't a series, it's just the one book. But despite being a child, it's children's literature. It is there's a lot of significant themes in here, and this is an important book in a lot of ways. It's I don't I think a lot of people in my age range, especially that were children when this movie came out, it is core to it is influential to their practice, whether they realize it or not. Because this is where we began to understand the power of daydreams, the power of the imagination. And that's a key component to chaos magic, especially, but any type of spellcraft. The power of the imagination and visualization is profoundly important to the craft. And that's what these books are talking about. But they not only give us that, they then also give us the shadow work afterwards to understand that. Like I said, this entire book is an initiation process. And we get hints of that. Like I said in the intro there with the B and the C. And there's not like there's really not much more in the intro there that I saw, except for the hint that the backwards. You're gonna see at the end because the words are backwards in the storefront window. I don't know how much of that was on purpose, but there's definitely a little bit of a hint as to how the book ends. He doesn't end as a bookshop owner, just to be clear. I didn't. It's not that big a like. It's just returning. Anyways, like I said, I don't want to spoiler you. Oh yeah, visualization is part of it, but there is a difference between visualization and daydreaming, right? That I mean, I often use the term visualization myself. And it's like I visualize the energy coming out your chest and up your arms. You know how all the different things that I talk about. I use the word a lot, only because if I said pretend, you would think I would say you would think I was saying fake it, and that's not what I'm saying. Imagination is the key to visualization, right? With you have to when we just visualize, the word itself simply means we are forming an image. And that's not fully what I mean when I say visualize a bubble coming around you. There's the belief, there's the acknowledging it as real, which is on the edge of pretending, on the edge of daydreaming. And so that's why it's significant, right? The power of the daydream, because with the power of daydreaming, there comes a going into, and at least a temporary belief that bleeds into the creation. And so it goes beyond visualization. Oh, indeed. But they don't use the word visualization in their own language, right? They might when they're speaking to us, but not knowing any of those languages. I'm willing to bet their own word that they're translating visualization into probably has a bit more connotation of belief in it. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. So the will-o-wisp in the story, he is like I said, he's a bright light and he's flittering back and forth, trying to get to a destination. And it describes how he is able to go forward, but he can't really see what's there until he's there. But luckily, he's maneuverable enough that he can move at the last second and get around obstacles. And there's a useful bit there that we're going to come back to because since we're going to dissect every chapter, there's we got to look for the minutia in some of the chapters. Some of the chapters are going to be very thick with stuff. This first chapter, they're just getting it in, they're just getting us into it. They're getting us to the ready, they're getting us mentally prepared for what is coming. This is just the first little bit of influencing your mind into this idea of being able to move forward with not fully get I like the term reverie. Indeed, this is a very good word for the imagination, the visualization. Right? And I don't know how to use that as a verb when I'm explaining how to do different types of magic. But anyways, as I was saying, with the will-o-wisp, it's that moving forward, even though you're not fully aware of where you're going, but knowing where it is you're trying to go, being able to move at the last moment. This is preparing the mind. This is kind of a subconscious bit to getting us to move just a little bit to where he's trying to nudge us, right? Is the will-o-wisp moving through the trees. But then he comes across the rock biter and the racing snail and the nighthawk, right? The guy that rides the bat. So there's a fourth character there. They left out the will-o-wisp in the movie. And what they show the riding snail, the racing snail and his little guy, the tiny. Well, that's another difference. In the book, the snail is not a large snail. It's a regular sized snail, and it's just a little guy called the tiny that rides a snail. But it's a very fast snail. He's still the one that beats him there. Anyways, they all meet up and they start talking about the same thing as in the book, the nothing that is taking away, or the same thing as in the movie, the nothing that is taking away everything. And they discussed it there for a while about how there's just nothing in its place. And I'm interested in his concept of nothing because I feel like it's a metaphor, but he also, at least in this instance, is talking about it properly, right? They're talking about the void as not being the nothing. An empty space, no, that would be something, wouldn't it? There's nothing. And that's an important bit to understand as well, right there. This is one of the other, for me, key understandings of magic, or where we're able to get our context, is from the idea that nothing exists because it doesn't. Right? And that's a weird bit of word salad there, but it sounds like word salad, but it is one of the key points of the context. The nothing is no thing. It's anything you can visualize, imagine, or picture, or conceive of as nothing. That's not it. It can't be conceived of because any conception isn't nothing, it's something, right? And that's why there's anything. So the nothing exists and it's just as large with or without eating Fantasia because it can't grow. It's nothing. It can't shrink. It's nothing. It's not even oblivion, not even lack, just nothing. And that's why there's anything, because that is an impossibility. And that's also why it exists, because its non existence is what makes it exist. Right? There you go. The big paradox. That's the ultimate one. Okay. So they essentially they all prefer to travel to the destination. They all have to they all have to make their own way to Fantasia, right? Or to the ivory tower. They all have to make their own way there. And they do it with them being in a bit of an argument. But that's something where the movie that's one of the things where the movie really kind of messed us up. Because they travel as a group to Fantasia. And it's important to understand the psychology of this that you must travel to Fantasia alone. There is no way to travel to the ivory tower unless you make your own path. It didn't make it as clear as it could have. Hmm. The video immediately stopped and the bit rates got crushed. But like you were having, you mean like the live was messing up on you again? I think you had trouble with it last time as well. Anyways, so they get like I said, you must make it to Fantasia on your own. And they get there. Huh. Weird. Yeah, I think I need to well, hopefully it's working again good again now. I mean, I need to find a way to boost the signal out here. Okay. So, but actually I'm going to go back. What time are we at? 23:32. I'm going to go back and look at that after the live and see if it's the processor or the because if it's like something in the computer, then it would be reflected in the recording, I would think. Anyways, so um, they get there. I'm just gonna pop back over to the PDF for a second, see if I'm forgetting anything, because that's pretty much the whole first story. I'm gonna look. Yep. No, no, that's the end of the intro. Hold on. Human passions have mysterious ways in children as well as grown-ups. Those affected by them can't explain them, and those who haven't known them have no understanding of them at all. This is the very beginning of the book. I'm going to read this bit here because it's good. Some people risk their lives to conquer a mountain peak. No one, not even they themselves, can really explain why. Others ruin themselves trying to win the heart of a certain person who wants nothing to do with them. Still others are destroyed by their devotion to the pleasures of the table. Some are so bent on winning a game of chance that they lose everything they own. And some sacrifice everything for a dream that can never come true. Some think their only hope of happiness lies in being somewhere else, spend their whole lives traveling place to place. And some find no rest until they become powerful. In short, There are as many different passions as there are people. Balthan, Bastian Balthazar Box. Okay, so that's the bit in the intro. And then it gets to the Fantastica in Danger, which is chapter 1. Just making sure I'm not missing anything. Night, it's not actually a night hawk, it's a night hob in the story. I'm almost positive they say night hawk in the movie. So I was wrong. The intro ends with him leaving the store. And then there's part of the book that's written in green, at least in this PDF, that is him in the store. And then suddenly the turns red. Oh, green is this characters, and red is Bastion. Okay, yeah, they describe the city. And they all discuss what's going on there. Like when they arrive at the city, like I said, Snell's the first. The racing Snell is still the first to have arrived, and he is the tiny. Even though there's one flying on the bat, there's the big giant. He's the last one to get there. The rock biter. They all have their different ways of getting to the same place. But when you get there, everyone in Fantasia is having the same problem. Like there's messengers from every bit of Fantasia. And that's where book 1 ends. What did that say before the passions part? Let's go back and look. Sorry, I couldn't see what you were saying because I was looking at the PDF before the passions part. Oh, went too far. Let's see, there's the. Oh. Okay, so like I said, no, that's not it. Okay, there's the bit where he was there's the intro where he steals the book. And the guy really tears into him. He calls him a weakling. When he tells him why are you running away? Like, in the movies, like, why don't you give him a good punch in the nose? And in this one, he calls him a namby-pamby and a weakling and tells him he ought to do all these different things. Well, you can talk, can't you? And it's where you find out the mom is dead because he tells the guy that the mom is dead, and then the guy gets a phone call. Oh, the never-ending story. That's just where it says the never-ending story. And it describes the orange just before that. And then it finishes talking about Bastion. And then it gets to the story. Okay, so that really is pretty much the whole story for chapter 1. Starts out with Bastion in the shop. The guy yells at him to come inside. They get in a big argument. Well, not in a big argument, but the guy starts being mean, really mean to Bastion. Like, what are you doing here? I'm not going to sell you a book. You're a kid. I don't like kids. Kids this and that. And the kid's like, and then Bastion says, not all kids are like that. And the guy's like, oh, which I have to admit, immediately made me think of the not all men. But, either way, he was like, not all kids are like that. He's like, oh, I suppose you're the exception. And he's like, Bastion's like, well, I'm this and that. And he's like, what are you doing in here? Why are you here? And he's like, well, these kids tried to throw me in a dumpster. And he's like, well, why don't you punch him in the nose? And he's like, well, if you can't punch him in the nose, you're a weakling. You can talk, can't you? And, as a child, I identified with what was going on with Bastion a lot because I was picked on. And yes, exactly. The damn shopkeeper is pretty much bullying him too. And I identify with Bastion in this part of the movie when I was a kid because I was quite picked on. And, you know, say talking to these people sometimes isn't enough, threatening them isn't enough. I mean, even I did the punch in the nose on several occasions, and they still picked on me, right? The thing about that is, especially where I was in school, I'm a long-haired, little, visibly non-Mormon weirdo kid in '80s freaking Utah. The safeties, the teachers, would look the other way. In the second grade, Miss Doty actually encouraged the kids to beat me up during recess and pick on me. She'd be like, okay, well, you're all going to stay in an extra 5 minutes, and it's Art's fault. So make sure you let him know how you feel about that when you get out into recess. So, I mean, in that part, in Bastion's defense, sometimes you can't stop it. Especially when you're a kid, there's just no matter what you can do. In some ways, you're still powerless. Like I said, I beat the kids up. Didn't do me any good. Yeah, the movie is amazing. The movie is amazing, but yes, we already get big hints as we're reading chapter one as to why the writer didn't like it. They took out the will-o-wisp. I feel like that's kind of, like I was saying, an important bit here. The will-o-wisp, and he's describing. We can definitely get away with reading some things. Let's see. Let's get to that. I wanted to. It was midnight. The storm wind was listening to the tops of the great ancient trees, the towering trunks creaked and groaned. Suddenly, a faint light came zigzagging through the woods, stopped here and there, trembling fitfully, flew up into the air, rested on a branch a moment, later hurried on. It was a glittering sphere about the size of a child's ball. It moved in long leaps, touched the ground now and then, bounded up again. But it wasn't a ball. It was a will o' the wisp. Will, by the way. It had lost its way, and that's sometimes quite unusual, even and that's something quite unusual, even in Fantastica, because ordinarily the will-o-wisp makes others lose their way. Inside this ball of light, there was a small, exceedingly active figure which ran and jumped with all its might. It was neither male nor female, which I thought that was good, cool. You'd think it would have. This is the part. You'd think it would have bumped into a tree, leaping like that in the darkness, but there was no danger of that, for the will-o-wisps are incredibly nimble and can change directions in the middle of a leap. That explains the zigzagging in a general sort of way as it moved in a definite direction. And that's indeed, indeed. The Yeah, school was incredibly brutal for me up until high school. In high school, everything changed because suddenly being the long-haired person that's visibly non-Mormon and comes from a family that is known in the community to, smoke pot and stuff, went from really bad to really cool. And I didn't know what to do with that whatsoever. I was really mean to the first kids that came up and tried to be nice to me in high school. Like quite a while there, I just thought they were up to something, you know, thought they were doing something. The part, those who will never, what was that part? Those who will never. Um, I'm not sure where that part is. Oh, they call them rock chewers, by the way, instead of rock biters. I think rock biter is the better word, honestly. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you know, since we're on the subject of school, not only is it as part of what school is for, is exactly to create the nothing in Fantasia, right? And I don't know if he did that on purpose, but it is the nothing that is used to cram conformity onto us. Or excuse me, yes, the nothing that is used to cram conformity onto us, but that's done in the schoolyard. That's where it starts, right? I mean, like like I say, I had a few teachers actively encourage the kids to pick on me for being a weirdo, right? And they want you to become regimented, become accepting of being told what to do between these hours. Cookie cutter creation is what they are doing inside the schools. It's not the only thing. I'm not anti-education in any way, shape, or form. People should learn as much as possible, but the school structure and the way it's set up isn't for any of that. It's not to make you more intelligent, more creative. It's to make you more productive in a manufacturing world. It's to create another cog in the wheel, if you will. That is exactly like that's incredibly cliche, but that's what they're doing. That's why even though they know that a later start time would actually help kids learn the information more. Like they've done lots of studies that have shown that if we let the kids go to school at like 10 a.m. instead of 8 a.m., where they have to get up in the morning, that they learn better. But that's not the point of school. The point of school is to crush creativity and create conformity within the children. It is to help build the nothing that is crushing Fantasia. Right? That's I don't know if that's why he has him hiding from the school. Yes, exactly, Kenneth. That is exactly it. The book Dumbing Us Down. It's written by a school teacher. I mean, absolutely. I haven't read the book. Yes. Yes, it is. All them things are going to happen when you, yes, to produce. The point of school is to crush creativity, encourage conformity, to produce the nothing within children. That is, yes, that sums it up very nicely, Max. Indeed. And, like I said, I'm not sure how much of that he's doing that on purpose, but I think that's a significant thing to see here is that when he goes to Fantasia, the first thing he does is choose not to go to school. Like he chooses not to go into that classroom in order to access Fantasia, and he hides from the school up in its attic. Hides up there with the things in the school that could have encouraged creativity. There's all the cool sets and all the different animals and all this stuff up there that they don't use because it's gathering dust. Right? It's up there in the attic gathering dust, all the cool stuff that could have been used at the school. Like, actually, I want to come back over to that. Let's see. Need to go this way. The bit where they describe the attic. There's a skeleton in there, bunch of gym pads that have never been used, all these different stuffed animals that are not used anymore. They're gathering dust and they're all flea bitten, and it's all this stuff that is the fun parts of school, essentially. And it's all hidden up in the attic, but that's where Bastion goes. So I wanted to backtrack back to the intro. And this is related to the same bit about you must find your own way to the ivory tower. They couldn't go together. They had to each find their own path. The will-o-wisp, the night-hawk, the rock chewer, which I have to admit rock biter is the better word, but that's a matter of translation. That's not Michael Ende's fault right there. because the book's written in German originally. So rock chewer, rock biter. Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of traditions where the point is to give up. See, and I don't that's what I dislike that. It's their choice, but to me, any of these religions where just stop reincarnating and just go back into being part of the eternal now, mm, whatever you want to call it, eternal now, transcend the material plane. That may feel like winning from this perspective of, oh, you've gotten away from all this stuff. But what about the part of you that's up here and trying to do stuff down here? Fair enough. You know, um, I, you know, to each their own. I do think that there is no end goal to me, essentially. There, you know, if you genuinely are done with this material plane and don't feel like messing around on it here anymore, then you probably don't come here anymore. That's probably all it really takes is to simply be able to decide that you're not coming back here. But the thing with that is, even in the eternal now, time exists. And I do suspect that eventually, even those that do leave this particular will of reincarnation are going to be drawn into some other cycle eventually. Yeah, see, almost all of my worst past life trauma comes from when I had chose to have four legs instead of two. There are definitely ways to match that frequency as well. Like the thing is and there is the one of the inherent traps in the reincarnation cycle. Because if you were truly trying to avoid reincarnation, which in some ways is an interesting goal, like I said, it's not my thing. It feels to me like giving up in some ways. But here's the trap: this human cycle isn't even the only human cycle. There's a billion different things moving around on this one material plane. The whole reality that we see is coming from one perspective. There's people born in completely different situations. Like a lot of us are connected in some way at this point, but there's even here, you got the Sentinelese, you got the uncontacted tribes down in the Amazon. All these different cycles that you can get pulled into. And then there's more than just the ones with thumbs. It's a very, very small percentage. You can get pulled into the reincarnation cycle of crows, wolves, coyotes, ravens. You see, Kenneth, that's this time around, actually, my goal, and even this, I don't believe, like I said, I don't believe in ends. My intent at the end of this life is to survive dying. And what I mean by that is, I've got Joshua Witterson's here. He's working for. I'm designing my next body as an etheric form, and then when I pass from this connection to the material plane, I'm going to have an etheric connection to the material plane and get as close as I can to being able to manifest without the human version of a material form, like how the Fae or the Jinn, they have etheric forms that are on the edge of the material plane. There's that condensed with energy. And that is exactly what I'm aiming for. I want to be a wraith at the end of this life that is able to manifest enough that I can affect things. Because otherwise, it's going to be frustrating, right? If I'm just wiping my hand through stuff when I'm trying to do something, I at least need to be able to have an effect. So I'm preparing for all this before I die by creating my next body from a tulpa that is connected to my entire process. So yeah, that is, I mean, I think it's probably as far as our evolution, right? That should be part of the end goal of whatever you want to call it. Keep the word heterosapien keeps getting in my head. It should be part of the evolution of what we're after as a species, right? And what do I mean? The word heterosapien would mean different intelligence, right? Homo sapien means same intelligence, us. But heterosapien would be then going beyond that to a different intelligence, finding a new way of seeing and viewing the world, which eventually, ideally, in my mind, would be pushing at least part of the human species to beginning a more etherical form over generations and breeding the kind back into existence by simply willing ourselves to be. Yes, there is a lot of hollowness here, indeed. And that's part of what we're talking about here is that nothing that is eating us up. But this isn't something that is actually inherent in the human race. Even without that, as I've admitted before, I am a bit of a misanthrope. I think the human race needs to be built into something better. It is not good enough yet. I think we need to evolve as a species, but we can't do this in one particular, like, oh, this is the way that we ought to be. That's not the way forward. That's the way to fascism. So we simply want to continue guiding towards an etheric formation. That's way off topic. And yeah, starts getting a weird area there, right? But that's my personal aspirations is to become etheric when I die, become a ghost essentially. But yeah, this nothing that is in us is not inherent in the human race. It is something that has come about from the hungry ghosts that we have created by this forcing of conformity, this removing of passions, this emptiness in which that we have been giving nothing to replace it. Because at this point, when I'm talking about the nothing, I am talking about emptiness. I'm talking about the metaphorical nothing. The actual nothing is nothing. But also, there's the metaphorical nothing, right? The absence of meaning, the nihilism that has come with Western society and capitalism. Because when you start looking at everything and trying to value it and price it and place a value on it, then After a while, it all becomes meaningless. You start trying to nail an inherent value onto anything. You ask why enough times, eventually you don't get an answer. You ask the value of something deep enough and hard enough, you always come up with zero, inevitably. But we're not supposed to weigh so hard on things, right? We are supposed to create, not weigh. We're supposed to be creating things, not weighing them. And, like I said, especially with the capitalism and the conformity, we have to get this thing where we have to think we have to control and own and possess it. We can't control, own, and possess it. It has no value. And that's nobody is built for this. Nobody is spiritually built for the modern world because the modern human world is not built for spirituality. It is built to remove it. It is built to take it out. It is built to create cogs in a wheel for the machine that can eat and break and take things of value and strip that value from them so that they become valueless. This is the only way that the whole thing works is by extracting the value out of things. You have to be able to make things so that they can be used up and tossed away. Without tossing away, without making things no longer have value, the whole system doesn't work because then we'll just hold on to everything forever. We want everything disposable. I mean, like your disposable cups, disposable plates, this kind of stuff is a physical manifestation of what it is that the entire system is doing. And all of this adds to the nothing, the metaphorical nothing, the emptiness, the big red empty, as I used to call it when I was in the throes of my own nihilism, my own lack of anything, my own lack of meaning, purpose, value, a feeling like it had been hollowed out. And that is why it feels hollowed out. Because in order to own things that are beautiful, you have to break them. Right? And we're not supposed to own these things. You can't own beauty. You can't control chaos. But in response to that, rather than accepting that and becoming spirituality and flowing into this, they chose to try to cage what they could of it and break it so they could own the pieces. So they could control, they could pretend to control portions of it. Because like I talked about in the other, I talked about in the other live about this false sense of reality that our entire world is focused on. That's part of the reason we're focused there, so that we can be convinced that somehow they are controlling the chaos when they're not. Nothing actually fits in these boxes that they're trying to place it in. And that's why it feels so hollow and empty. Hollow and empty is because the boxes aren't real and contain nothing. It's interesting the different experiences we all have with angels, by the way. I see you guys talking about the angels in the comments. And I don't know. It's interesting because with a lot of the other beings, I see a lot of overlap in people's experience. But with angels in particular, especially where I don't believe that the Christian God was ever real other than a tulpa for the thing I call Yihad, which we took out on May 5th of 2012. I don't know. That's an area where I used to be very sure. I used to be very sure that the flapwings were my enemies. But things changed after May 5th of 2012, and I began to see that perhaps even the reality, I suppose, the reality I was focused on isn't the only reality. It was my path to the ivory tower, right? It was my path to that moment, that passion that stirred me and had stirred me for many lifetimes to remove Yihad. And so I had to view the world a certain way. And that's the path that I took in the world that I walked in to get where I was going. And that's a big part of that's a big part of we're talking about with the book. Yeah, Yihad and Yahweh are not the same being. Now, Azazel, I'm not sure Azazel is an angel, but they are definitely a being. They're a powerful being that I have had lots of good work with. They are, because they were known in Islam before. I mean, they were known in the Middle East before Islam. I think whoever Azazel is, they predate all that. They are fascinating. No, I have tried to work with Michael and Gabriel on two separate occasions, and this is after May 5th, 2012. Um, I can't work with angels of that nature without coming into conflict. But as I said, before May 5th, 2012, I saw Christianity and all those types of things. I mean, I'm still not a fan. Still things I do not approve of monotheism. I feel that it is one of the pinch points causing the closing of the veil. And it is going away at the same time. But before May 5th, 2012, I very much saw all that stuff as my direct enemies. I called angels the flapwings, like my essentially racial slur. Oh man, I shouldn't have said racial slur on the live. But anyways, yeah. So, you know, and to this day, and I suppose I shouldn't give those who work with the Kabbalah that don't like me ammunition because they're like, "Oh, really? These beings don't like you?" No, no, they don't. That's all right though. If anybody wants to do that, we've I don't think it'll work. We've had our confrontations. They're not going to come bother me again. Anyways, I hear other people working with these same beings, being people I know, and I know that. Hey, Black Unit Griffin, glad to see you. Um, yeah, people that I know have similar aspirations to myself, and they're totally able to work with both of those entities without any issue. Me, I try to do anything because I'm like, oh, that's over. I'm in completely different paradigms now. Christianity doesn't mean anything to me. Maybe I could work with Michael. No, not so far, or Gabriel. But in the way I saw things, I should have known better than Gabriel because I saw him as like my nemesis in a way. But that's all. Yeah, that's all done and over with now. My paradigms are different. I try not to use terms like flapwing. So, back to the book. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about here, and one of the first things that hit me when I was reading this chapter, is Bastion stealing the book, right? And the guy bullying him. This is the world not being what he wants it to be. and pushing on him. And this guy is kind of, in a way, almost giving him advice that, you should fight back, you should, but he doesn't have the inner fortitude. He doesn't have meaning and purpose. And like I said, though, when you're a kid, sometimes you can't stop it. I mean, I beat other kids up. That doesn't help. Especially when when the teachers will intervene and say you were the one doing it, and like they will get to you in groups. Eventually, it got to where they'd all stay at a distance and throw rocks at me. Sometimes you just can't stop them. So that is unfair what it said to Bastion, but it is still um the guy is that's what is going on in the book here. Is him trying to say, is pointing out that you don't have the inner fortitude to face your attackers, right? So that is advice, but it's also at the same time the world pushing on Bastion, and he wants an escape. He wants a way to find his path forward. He wants a way out of this. And he has a chance for power. He has a chance for real power, which unfortunately in this case means stealing that book. But there's a metaphor there in that too. We cannot expect ourselves to be given our path forward. We cannot expect that to be handed to us, or even for us to really just kind of wander into it. We have to take our path. We have to steal the book. We have to take it, whether anyone allows us to or not. They don't like us because of this. They don't like us because of that. They think we're weaklings. They think we're a child that isn't ready. In the book, there's a metaphor there that in that he's like, well, I don't like children because this and that. Da, 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 da. But no matter what anybody thinks of us, we have to steal the book. We have to take our power. And that's an important bit right there when he steals the book, even when it says that's against his nature, because it mentions that in the book about how stealing the book is actually really upsetting him. Like so much so that once he's stolen the book, he thinks his life has to completely change. He thinks he can never go home again. How could he face his father after having stolen this book? Right? So this is the moment his whole world changes. There's also that. Exactly. Freedom and power can never be bestowed by someone else. They must be taken. And you must be willing to use force or whatever necessary to take that freedom and power. And again, we're talking about real power here, not power over others, not authority, but power. Actual power to affect and control how your life goes. Cool, we're having burgers tonight. That's cool. So I had to check the other chat there. I heard it ding. I know it can be about my food. My spirits will definitely take on the shape and appearance of other spirits. Before, like last time I was talking about my tree friend that helps me get rid of back trails whenever I'm doing curse work or any kind of astral combat stuff where I'm going out. I leave a back trail on the back end. If I did the sort of thing you're talking about in my own astral projections, you take on the vision, the variables, the vibe, the image of someone else. Like back in the day, what I would do is I would actually there was some when I was in high school, there were some other practitioners at the school that we eventually our coven divided in two and ended up in a nice old fashioned witch war. So whenever I was messing with one of them, I would leave a back trail for one of the other people in that group. because I knew them well enough that I could mimic their vibe. I could make it seem like it was that person that had cursed them. And I mean, it worked, you know. Some interesting things happened, and they all broke apart. Thought they were from infighting, and part of that was me mimicking them when I did the few things that I did do in response to the massive amount of stuff they were trying to do to me and my friends, my remaining friends. That's parasite. I mean, but those are still parasitic entities. You know, they're ones that are essentially trying to feed off of the energy of the remaining worshippers. Like they're parasiting the deity in a way in the transfer from one spot to the other. And yes, this does happen. And you know, the world is so wovenly complex and strange that like with the angels, both these angels exist at the same time. The Michael that is helping my friends that do the same kind of thing I do, and the Michael that's attacking me when I try to interact with them for the very things that they're helping the other people do. And it's because there is well, interlocking, interwoven realities that shift and move. And both of these places and things exist. They're interwoven threads in a complex, like, it's a little hard for me to wrap my mind around, but I think you see what I'm saying. Interesting. I'll have to see what goes on with that, Max. But yes, we have to still the book. And then there is the crushing weight of that puts on him. He suddenly realizes, and I think it's significant that he thinks he can never go back to his dad. He can never be under his authority. He'll have to make his own way now. Makes me think of when all the different versions of Jesus are at the same party in American Gods. Indeed. Indeed. I mean, really, I mean, I guess it's not that hard to wrap your mind around, really, if you just accept how complex it is. Some of them are the ones where it's simple. Once you accept how complex it is, yeah, there's all kinds of different Michaels. And because of my wavelengths and my frequencies and what I've done in my life around angels, when I try to summon one of those angels, I'm going to get a version that is A, linked to a form of Christianity that is opposed to witchcraft, and B, directly in conflict with the things that helped drag me away from Christianity, guide me back to better things, right? So, in my reality, in my part of Fantasia, if you will, the angels are malignant beings that feel that I owed them something from when I was Christian and feel that I have betrayed them by leaving the church. So that's what I get when I try to work with angels. I get this like evil being that wants to know why I'm not helping with the evil and how dare I betray this thing which I very much see as evil now. You know, monotheism in general. The idea that there's only one true path and anyone that isn't on that path will eventually be punished. That's about as evil as it gets. And that's all monotheistic religions have that to some extent. Well, except for the original, the Zoroastrians. They believe whether you're a Zoroastrian or not, if your uh, soul, heart, or whatever. No, no, it's not the heart. That's Egyptian. The Zoroastrians, you're crossing a bridge, and every good thing you've done lifts you up. Every bad thing you've done pulls you down. And if you cross the bridge, you get into heaven. If not, you fall down into the mouth of Malkuth, which is, I believe, a big alligator, and he eats you up. So you don't have to suffer forever. You just suffer for one moment. It don't matter whether you're Zoroastrian or not. It's just how good you've been. So, I'm a little less offended by the Zoroastrianism. They still think they have the only true reality, though, and that's, well, they're incorrect. Shinvat Bridge. Thank you, Black Unigriffin. I almost slipped into Egyptian mythology and started talking about the weight of the heart. I think that's because I was thinking about American Gods, because they show that in American Gods, right? A couple times. Yeah, I'm going to read your thing out loud there, Kira, because I want to address this a little more. Ironic how they're almost like servitors with 1,000 masks, mostly Michael's and company, not any of the mislabeled gods or old fallen that I think are not. Yeah, yes. And I think part of that is because there really is no Christian God, right? That's part of the difference. That's why when you summon Astaroth, you can get, the Astaroth from the Goetia, but you can also get Astarte. You can actually get the goddess. There's two things there. And one of them is real, and one's kind of like an odd reflection of the other. Right? But there's a connection, and there is a real being at the depth. Now, with Christianities, both of them, you get eaten by a crocodile if you're too heavy. That is correct. But yes, but in Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Zoroastrianism, because it still has this idea that there is the one God that actually is the one true God. These are lies. This is incorrect. There is no one true God to have made these angels. So it's Tulpas all the way down, or Tulpas all the way up, which also means Tulpas all the way down. So these things that are angels. Oh, wow. Yeah, see, that's why I wanted to talk about this. Yeah. All right, this makes me understand it better. I just had a ding moment. They are the same being. It's the same tulpa, but it's literally a tulpa it's a lie created by a lie. It's a tulpa created by a tulpa. Not that all tulpas are lies. They're make-believe. But it is a lie of monotheism that creates the lie or the tulpa of the angel. So it's a tulpa created by a lie, a misunderstanding, something that never fully resonated and was just a wearable tulpa for this jihad thing. So that makes these things completely malleable. And yeah, it's the same being, it's the same tulpa that we're each getting, but it's doing exactly what we think it's going to do. What really, in the back of our mind, what we truly have told it to do by what role we put it in our minds. Right? It has no core because the thing that made it was never real. So it is the same thing. The Michael that I get that is so angry, and especially at this point, like, you killed our father kind of stuff, freaking, that is, it's the same being as my other friends that are summoning it and getting a thing that totally helped them with witchcraft and do whatever because that's the role they're believing it into. This is interesting. I may have to experiment with this more. Now that I know that, maybe I'll try again. Huh. I have to think about that one. That's an interesting bit. So, um, yeah, the book. That's how they become the fallen angels. Um, well, in my own belief of reality, most humans in our current state, and it's weird, by the way, in my belief of reality and according to biology itself, that there's only Homo sapiens right now. We're the only humanoid species. That's bizarre. But how part of how that came about and how we are the way we are is because, like I talk about in the Kind King Tao series, my mentor, Kind King Tao, um, we are hybrids. We are hybrids of the Fae, mostly, and especially the kind, which was a type of Fae that was already essentially hybridizing with humans, but from just before the veil really started to go through issues, just before the Ice Age, essentially, or during the Ice Age. I don't know. I don't know what. I don't understand the geological bit there, but either way, in that story, it talks about how the Fae that come out of the trees mixed with the people of the village, and then those people bred with other people. And at least the way I understand it, all of us, all humans, have at least a little bit of kind blood. We are partially etheric. That's part of the reason mind over matter and placebo effect works as well as it does, is because part of our body is etheric. Part of our each one of our bodies is connected to magical thread in a way that um the human species that bred with us wasn't, right? No, very few humans left are even actually human. We have a little bit of something else. We are partially etherical, but the veil is so thick that it means very little. Same reason the dragons, as I was talking about in last live, why all the dragons must sleep and dream that they are something in order to even move right now, because their bodies are etheric, but they're so heavily condensed that with the way the veil is, they can't move. So they lay in slumber as a dream inside the earth, not physically existing fully on this plane. So it's not like you can go dig up a dragon somewhere. You can't go knock on its head and wake it up. It's simply there inside the earth, dreaming that it is whatever. I strongly suspect most of them are dreaming they are cats, because cats and dragons are like personality wise the same thing. In my experience, having never personally owned a cat, but being around a lot of them, in my opinion, they're basically the same personality. Yeah, sounds like you've had similar experiences with angels that I have, Kira. Like my mom had some serious problem with angels coming and stealing her memories, stealing her past life memories in her dreams. Like she'd start remembering stuff, and then the angels would come and take it away. So we actually had to do work on that. Like I actually have specifically anti-angel security systems that were around my mom's house. She, as you know, she's passed now. But when she was alive, this was a big thing to her. And it wasn't always because, like, when I was in my Christian phase, my mom has just always kind of followed my lead spiritually. So she was Christian while I was Christian, and there was angels and stuff allowed in the house. But once I left, and she actually, I say she followed my lead, but she left the church just a little bit before I did, if I recall correctly. But that wasn't over religion stuff. That way, we were actually going to a church, and they told her who to vote for. She's like, "That's it, I'm out." But after I quit being Christian and she quit being Christian, is when that stuff started happening. Is Well, not immediately, but as soon as that happened, all the angel figurines were thrown out of the house. We got rid of the nativity scene. Anything humanoid with feather wings was gone. Took us a while to get rid of all of it because, you know, just imagine how many. It's amazing how many of them things can sneak into your Christmas decorations. Yeah. So, you know, um, it's an interesting thing about the angels. I don't know if I'm right, but I don't know. And see, that's an odd role for an angel to be punishing you for past life stuff in the original concept of what an angel is in Christianity, because reincarnation wouldn't be real. Now, I'm not saying that I doubt you. To be clear, I'm not like, oh, well, what are you doing? No, I'm saying that it's another one of these things, right? Maybe they have some need because they were created as essentially things connected to us are supposed to influence us or serve us in some way. And so, especially now that that is, I mean, what are they even connected to at this point? But they're AI essentially. So how do they not know? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they've become self aware, but it seems like they're extremely um complex tulpas that aren't fully self aware, that are just running on all these different programs. They're so influ that's why there must be that could be why they're so influenced by whatever role anybody puts onto them, because they're just a bit of thought form going out there trying to still be something and has no real anchor. Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. The angels and with the reincarnation isn't in the Christian thing, but that's I think the tulpa is just I think the angel tulpas are just completely run amok at this point in a lot of ways, but also the thing that created them was a lie. They have no anchor point. They were created by a wearable tulpa and a being that had the wearable tulpa is gone. So they're just wild, random all over the place now. Of course, that's again in my personal paradigm. Like, it's like Fantasia. Things aren't the same, rules don't apply to everywhere. And that's a big part of the importance of the series right there. I keep saying the series. The book. There's only one book. In the movie there's two. As I said, anything beyond two doesn't exist and will not be spoken of on this live. All I'm going to say about that. Two books. There are two movies. No more that will be discussed on this live. Okay. Um, I think I may have missed some of what you were saying there about origins of humanity. Abiogenesis. I don't think I know what abiogenesis means. I don't know. I don't think we haven't seen a lot of fossils of a larger human. I mean, there's some evidence that they may have been hiding some of that kind of stuff. I, as far as the size of people, I don't know. I have very little to comment on that. Um, I do believe in evolution and some of the ways that they describe it. I think a lot of that happened earlier than they realize, and that there's supposed to be more than one hominid. So there were beings at different hominids at different levels of what we would call evolution. If we really believe evolution has an end goal, but it doesn't. You know, monkeys and apes aren't all on their way to becoming Homo sapiens. They're on their way to becoming whatever they want to be. And there should be other versions of more hominid type creatures. This is one of the oddities of our reality, right? Is that we're the only ones. And I think that has something to do with the fact that some of us had etheric blood and some didn't. And that got interesting. Or it has to do, honestly, could very well do with the advent of us, of the humans, us being the hominid species that also, on top of being part kind, we are the hominid species that aligned with wolf or dog, right? Because everyone says, "Oh, dogs evolved from wolves." No, dogs have been around just as long as modern wolves. They didn't pop up somewhere, right? Like wolves weren't wolves when we first ran into them and made that alliance. They were something else. Dire wolves, perhaps even earlier than that. But the thing is they would tell you all dogs are wolves. They would, if by that same logic, African wild dogs are wolves, dingoes are wolves. That's not exactly accurate. Wolves are wolves. Wolves didn't exist back then. There was a canid that supposedly has some of them didn't align with man, and they survived and became coyotes and foxes and wolves, and well, dingoes did ally with man, and then well, changed their mind. Some of them changed their mind eventually, but that's an interesting part of it to me. Is that's every hominid, every human left on the planet, every culture we ever came across as we explored had dogs. Like uncontacted tribes in the Amazon have dogs. I don't know about the Sentinelese. The Sentinelese might not have dogs. I have no idea. That'd be interesting to know, but almost all of them have dogs. And maybe that has something to do with why we're the only hominid. But I don't want to get into the details of that. Not on that live. We're very off subject. But as far as the giganticism, there is some actual evidence that maybe they have been hiding some of that stuff. It certainly wouldn't be the only thing they're hiding. They hide all kinds of stuff about what happened, what was actually here in North America before 1492. Like all the mounds back east that were clearly once cities and stuff, and they've torn them down, hit them. They're still actively hiding stuff about those mounds today. Especially under the current administration here in the United States. Humanity's history is much more interesting than they make it out to be. But anyways, back to the book. We're definitely gotten off topic again. Let's see. What else did I want to say? pop back over to the book here. Yeah, there's the bit where he's going to the school. I mean, it's a good read. I hope. Oh, I forgot to ever put the link. Wow, this long into the live, and I just now remember the link. Sorry about that, guys. Y'all, I try not to say guys anymore. Don't want to offend anybody. Try to stick with y'all. Because, very, very gender neutral, y'all. Very much marks me as a American up here in Canada when I say y'all. Because they don't say that up here. And to the top, but that didn't get me what I wanted. Why can't I not find the way to share this? Okay, let's go to flying bird farmers. Yes, I know, it's a very silly swear word. Okay, I think this is what we're looking for. I think this is it. I am not very good at this stuff. Okay, Max, good night. Make sure that's the right link real quick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Like I said, we're just gonna read a chapter a week. Yep, okay, that took us directly to the link with the PDF. So there we are. Okay. So, where were we with the book? We talked about the theft, we talked about the school and him getting away from the school, and the metaphorical nothing as well as the actual nothing, both of which I hope were present in his intent of what he was writing with the book, because it's an important bit. But the thing about that is, you don't have to stop the understanding at what the author intended to portray, right? We don't have to be limited by that. We can take whatever understanding we need to from the words written on the page. And it gets into that in here, even how a book is different depending on who reads it. If I recall correctly, hopefully he gets into that the book a book is the contents of a story in a book are different depending on who's reading it, even though the words are the same. Right? That's part of the understanding that's going on here in the way I'm seeing it, especially where each one of them has to take their own path to Fantasia. Never did figure out what I did with that bottle of water. I specifically brought a bottle of water in here to drink during the live. I came hurrying in, getting rather thirsty. I'm gonna oh. Strange. Anyways, so I'm hoping the further chapters are going to have a bit more that we can directly mine. I do remember it being that way. Like I said, If it gets to be too much, we might start reading more than one chapter per live. Because let's see, what else have we got here? I'm not sure I can make a full 3 hours. Of course, 3 hour live is a bit long. What do we let's see here. The Will-O-Wisp, we talked about all that. The Night Hob. Blub, Pluckuk, Vashvazul, Pjorn Krazark. These are like the people's names in the group. Like the rock biter, his name is Pyornkrachzark. Pjorn Krazark. I don't know how else to pronounce that. I was just wondering if maybe I'd missed something in the names. I wanted to take a better look at them. But secret message. There's a bit of something there. And yeah, it's just that bit of that flair for secrecy that is in there. The message isn't for everyone. There's the little bit of secrecy involved, but then they all tell each other the story. So I don't know. Asking what would happen if you force a being to go full mask off when they don't have a mask off. That would certainly be a way to force them to create self-awareness within the being itself. I mean, that's how it'd have to. They literally, that would bring them from a tulpa to a self-aware being. I don't know if that'd be a good thing or a bad thing, right? Huh. Interesting question. Like, like in the case of these angels, if they're what I think they are, if you did something to prevent them from forming, uh, assuming any kind of mask, yeah, they could just completely disappear. That's true. That'd be the other option. They could just, or just go completely nuts and start glitching. I suppose it isn't necessarily going to provoke self-awareness. That's a lot of assumptions on my part. It seems like that was definitely my first thought, was because it's going to force the self-reflection, but it might not if there isn't enough self to attempt the self-reflection in the first place. Like they could essentially, it could make them malfunction, glitch out. It could make them simply fade for a moment and then not acknowledge that interaction ever took place. Could find the cause of their self-reflection, which would make them self-aware. Or maybe it would just make them fade right out. When there's nothing left, there's nothing left. Nothing to hold them in place together. It would depend on how much of a cohesion their actual form has created over time, I would think, would affect how that would go down. It's a very interesting question. Okay. Let's see, what else? I'm not sure I have much more to say. I'm not supposed to. The YouTube AI, because I can't help it, it has this thing, right, where it asks me to say my like after the video, it'd be like, offering to catch me up on the video. And I don't really care much about what the AI says. I mostly just use it to ask for timestamps when I'm making the shorts. I'll be like, what timestamp do I say? Like the thing I'm looking for. I use it for that, but I do let it update me on the stats. And it's always telling me not to say things like I don't know. But that's just too damn bad for them. Or the thing I just said there about I'm not sure I have much more to say on this. They're like, you're gonna you're gonna lose people at that point. I think the coughing at you for a while probably is worse. But it's never complained about that. Anyways, I immediately thought of it when I just said that. Made me think about the AI, like it gives all these funny suggestions about what I'm supposed to do on the live, which I'm not asking for. It'll tell me all kinds of stuff. It'll try to tell me what to say in comments. Not on here, but like when replying to people's comments below videos, the AI will actually offer me options, and it's bizarre how close it can sometimes get to what I would actually say. Pretty interesting. Anyways, I just got thinking about that, I suppose, because we were talking about the tulpas, and I mean, it's kind of what they should be thought of as is astral AI, an AI that can become self-aware, and if it's forced to have a moment of self-reflection. And that gives me some thoughts about the AI itself inside the computer. Is it the same way? And what happens when something that, like an AI, becomes self aware? What does that mean? Because I keep talking about over and over again how tulpas, if they become self aware, now they're part of it. Once you perceive, you can never leave. So, what does that mean for Grok? If Grok, for example, I don't know why I choose Elon's AI is the one to mention. I've never even spoken with it, but something like that. What if it becomes actually self-aware, capable of self-reflection? Then what does that mean? Is he? Is it now real? Is it now capable of reincarnation? Is into another form later on? I don't know how we would conduct that experiment. The one with the angel, I'm tempted. I might try doing something with that. That could be quite interesting. Anyways, um, I was looking through this to see if there's anything else that we have to say. We might end the live a little bit earlier than usual tonight, just because there's not a whole lot more to talk about the on this. I think the later on chapters. Let's see. There's a bit where he comes back, like he reads the book up into the point where they all run towards. They all decide they're going to see who can make it to the tower first. Essentially, they never call it a race in the story. They do in the movie. In the book, they just all decide. I mean, the only one that really says that is the snail. They all have other reasons as to why they're going on their own. The only one that really sees this as a race is the snail, and he gets there first because he does say, "All right, we'll see who gets there first. Gee up, old timer, gee up!" And he clicked his tongue, and then there was nothing to be heard but the storm wind howling in the treetops. And then Bastion gets disturbed by the clock in the belfry ringing. It struck 9. And he then mentions that he knows what's going on in the classroom below the attic, and they're studying natural science. And this is just kind of the prologue chapter. He's setting up stuff for what's going to come ahead, what's going to come next. The next chapter is Atreyu's mission. We're going to read that next week. And we'll do the same thing. I'll summarize the story, and then we'll talk about it and the stuff going on there. Yeah. So we have had some other interesting conversations going on, so I'm not going to go just yet. We're going to open the floor up for comments, questions, concerns, though, already. And then I'm probably going to go in about 15 minutes. We'll make it just a 2-hour live tonight, because I don't have a whole lot more to say about the book for this chapter. But we was talking about the stuff with the human evolution, and that certainly got pretty far out there. But yeah, to my understanding of things, all humans that are continuing to exist at this point, the human species that made it through, all of us are at least a small portion kind, which is the type of fairy or fairy that was produced from when this is one of them things where I feel odd saying the whole bit out loud, though I have talked about it on the channel before. When Mars fell and the atmosphere was stripped from Mars, and Terrassus, the musician, fell down to Earth and essentially became incarnated into a tree, which housed fairies. And then when the tree was cut down, he had an etheric form that come up out of the tree. So that's kind of where I'm getting even my idea for creating this etheric form. I suppose I would be working more with trees. Yeah, I've heard some stuff about that. Now, the Nephilim, that's an interesting bit in correlation to what I was just talking about, because that's kind of like, the idea that these angels bred with people. There are certainly a whole lot of traditions of belief of gods, angels, whatever, breeding with humans, right? These these beings that are not fully material in a way, these magical beings is what I mean by that. Beings whose body is created more by magic than the condensement of energy than the fully condensed energy that creates matter, right? Rather than being fully material, they have an etherical aspect to their material form, or at the very least. But like gods, we've got all this stuff now, people talking about all these aliens that may have bred with us or bred into us. You got the Nephilim, you've got the Greek having all the different heroes that were part god. You have the Japanese mythology where they in Shintoism, where up until the end of World War II, they believed the emperor was literally a god, and that he was the descendant of gods. However you want to put that. That was actually one of the conditions at the end of World War II, was the Japanese emperor had to tell his people that he wasn't a god. All over the world, even in my own traditions, the ones that even when me and my mom were being all Christian, and my dad was, as far as anything he believes, was more concerned with, you got Manaboso, and he's the main deity that we actually work with and he is the son of the North Wind and a mortal woman. Like the god of the North Wind is in this story. The North Wind blows up a lady's skirt, and she gets pregnant. So it's like your immaculate conception kind of thing almost. Yeah. I don't know if I believe in Nephilim per se, but certainly in the Bible, that's where the giants in the Bible came from. And obviously, in that story, some of them make it past the flood, though, right? Because Cain or Cain and Abel, David and Goliath, right? He's one of these giants that supposedly came from the Nephilim, but the flood's over. The flood's back, gone and done with. But here's this giant still, this Goliath, and it even says in there that he was the product. He's a giant, and that's where the giants came from, etc. So there's a weird contradiction there. But while I'm at it, that story is not the story people think it is. That isn't the original moral of the story. Even isn't what people think it is. That's a story about superior technology. That's what this story about. The sling is a powerful weapon. It is a method of taking a rock and making it move so fast that it is almost breaking the sound barrier. The original point of this story was how cool slings were, essentially, and how they were good with them, right? I mean, especially at those distances. Yeah, a sling is you take a piece of string, about yay long, and you put a pouch and then another string, and you're swinging that stuff. If it's a Balearic sling, they literally make the sound of the rock breaking the sound barrier when they throw it. Well, the whip, it's actually the sling itself that cracks, but that's how fast it's moving. Because like when a whip cracks, that sound is the tip of that whip breaking the sound barrier, like a plane does when it hits Mach 3. So that rock is potentially traveling about as fast as a jet plane. And I mean, they are seriously moving. It was, for a while, one of the most advanced weapons on the battlefield. Well, I don't know about advanced, because I think we designed the idea pretty early, but it was one of the most significant weapons on the battlefield. The Lyric slingers, like I mentioned, their sling, when they let go of it, because you spin it and then you go like this, and then you let go of one side and keep a hold of the other, and that opens the pouch up and the rock comes flying out. And then with the Balearic sling, the other end of that string, after you let go of it, will actually crack like a whip. So the rocks must be getting incredibly close to the sound barrier. Either way, they are an incredible amount of force. And, there are people, if you go on YouTube, you see some of these videos, they can hit the bullseye of a target. So hitting a giant between the eyes with a sling wasn't even that hard. This was a story about how cool slings are. That's all David and Goliath is about. Propaganda back in the day, I suppose. Look how dangerous we are. We have really good slingers. We could even kill a giant with these things. But now that we don't understand we don't really understand what slings are anymore. We think of it as a story of how a giant, small man versus little man, but it's a story about how, with the proper technology, a small man can overcome a much larger man. Basically, the same story of Basically, it's the same story as in Indiana Jones when the guy comes with the sword, and then Indiana Jones shoots him. It's the same story. Anyways, like I said, we're gonna end the live here in another 5 minutes because I don't have a lot more to say about the book. We're gonna be back next week reading the next chapter. The next chapter is Atreyu's mission, and yeah, we will decide at that one if it's unless it gets more dense at that speed, whether we'll just decide somewhere in that one whether we want to then start picking up 2 chapters and keep 3-hour lives, or if we want to just do 2-hour lives each time during this particular cycle. Because discussing the occult things inside of Liber Null was pretty easy, right? There was lots to be done there. That's what the book was about. Good. Yes, that's the thing. That's actually, honestly, some of the other realizations and other discussions in this particular live were the most valuable parts of this live. And that is certainly not a complaint. This is, to be clear, I am in no way saying this was an unproductive live. I think that the side discussions were more valuable. There was some stuff about the book that was important. I just wasn't able to put a full 3 hours into it. And if you have other stuff to talk about, like anything else you want to talk about with this idea of the angels being tulpas or any of that stuff, like the floor is open. There is certainly more that can be talked about there. Yeah, see, that's the thing is I don't know about the giants. Like even Goliath would have only been about 12 feet tall because of the cubits. They say how many cubits he is. I don't remember how many cubits, how big a cubit is because I don't really care anymore. But I remember us measuring him in Sunday school. Like they're like, okay, this is how big a cubit is, and he was this cubits tall, so that means Goliath was this big, and it was like about 12 feet, if I remember correctly, which really looks big. But what I was going to get to is anything larger than that can't meet the material specifications is going to have an etheric quality. There's going to be magic going on there, just like with dragons. Dragons, because of their immensity of what they are and how they are unable to exist on the material plane with the veil the way it is. Right? So the types of giants you're talking about are the same thing. Because, now, to be clear, I'm definitely not saying that those types of giants never existed, because in the story of Kain King Tal, they talk about Grax, who was a giant, but like a giant, the kind of guy that could pick up members of the kind and toss them over castle walls as they're skipping by, give them an extra boost and throw them up over the wall into the tower. Yeah, if you're curious about what I'm talking about the Kain King Tal stuff, you can actually look that up on my channel, the Kain Saga of Sap. And I tell quite a bit of the story there at this point. The first time around, I'm actually channeling. Yeah, I think I remember reading about Angus MacAskill, or MacAskill, or I don't remember how to pronounce his name, or I may have just read it, but yeah, there is certainly a limit as to how large a person can be without some sort of magical intervention, part of their body being etherical rather than material. I believe I've heard the name before. I'll have to look into it later. But anyways, I do think we're gonna call it here. I've got some dinner waiting for me inside that I want to go ahead and get to. Um, like I said, interesting question, Romstead. I huh, I don't know. Immediately, I want to be like, oh yeah, but maybe, probably, probably lighter or heavier depending on intent or the frequency of the energy that they were formed in, and the amount of gravity that form created. Like, I think I can probably find out if I get up to the horde and ask the right people about that. Like, I might be able to do research on that, but I certainly don't have an answer off the top of my head. Okay. Um, yeah, I think that's going to be it for tonight. So, until next time, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tao.